We just got to look at all of Beex's skill trees, and some of the stuff in here is pretty insane. Not only that, but she has over 113 skills, so without further ado, let's jump into this and not waste too much time. Before we do though, I do want to give a thanks to 2K for allowing me to show these skill trees to you guys early, and yeah, let's jump into it. First off, we have our Vault Hunter trait, which is going to be Phase Covenant. If you're not familiar, each of the Vault Hunters have a specific trait, and for the most part, these are passive and are active most of the time. For Beex, we have Phase Covenant. Beex is attuned to the elemental type of our current gun, converting all action skill and melee damage into that type. I think starting off we should do the red tree because a lot of people are excited for the Phase Familiar, and it was confirmed her Phase Familiar, you know, the tiger thing, they go by the name of Trouble. So for the red tree action skill, we have Phase Familiar. Beex is joined by her minion Trouble. When killed, Trouble will respawn after a cooldown. Press F to teleport Trouble, dealing damage in an area. Trouble then transforms into a bad A, sorry, I don't cuss on my channel, fully restoring health and gaining increased damage for a duration. Activating Phase Familiar will respawn Trouble if currently dead. Now if you want to read all the numbers at the bottom you can, I'm not going to go into detail on that because it would drag on the video. And also I'm not going to put my thought out about every skill because that would also drag out the video. This is going to be a long video, so strap in. Alright, for the first skill in red tree we have Grave Sustenance. Kill skill, restore a percentage of missing action skill duration. Next up we have Enhancement. Beex gains bonus kinetic damage with the weapons while her action skill is active. If you don't know, kinetic damage is referring to non-elemental damage. Blood is magic. Beex deals increased action skill damage to higher her health. Hasty Fiends. Beex and her minions gain increased movement speed and damage reduction. Onto the tier 2 skills, we have Grave Command. Kill skill, restore a percentage of Trouble's command skill cooldown and respawn cooldown. And yes, there is a typo for the bottom word respawn, I'm sure they're gonna fix that. For the first augment, we have Violent Outburst. So for Borderlands 4, you can equip one augment to your character for your build, and that will appear on the left side of the screen right here. The locked triangle right below that is your capstone, and that's going to be what you have at the end of your trees. That is also capped to 1, so you can only have on 1 at a time for your build. So you get 1 augment, 1 capstone. Anyways, Violent Outburst, command skill, press and hold F to command Trouble to explode himself, dealing ordnance damage to all nearby enemies and restoring health to Beex. While Phase Familiar is active, sacrifice 33% of his maximum health capacity instead. I do want to mention too, I am reading the PC controls, so you can see there it says F, like press the F key. So if you play on controllers or different binds, the buttons will obviously be different. Overprotective. Kill skill, Beex and her minions gain Overshield. Overshield is a new mechanic in the Borderlands franchise, and what this is a bit of shield on top of your regular shield. So let's say your normal shield has a maximum of 1000 capacity. Overshield can add an extra 200, making it, 1200 capacity, and it will be indicated by a lighter blue bar over your shield. For the second augment, we have Blink Strike. Command skill, press and hold F to command Trouble to Blink Strike target enemy, dealing damage. Blink Strike always critically strikes enemies below 50% HP. Yao and Bei. Beex's minions gain increased maximum health capacity. Beex gains increased gun damage for a duration after commanding Trouble. For the tier 3 skills, we have Mourning. Beex's kill skills gain increased effectiveness. Claw and Bang. Beex and her minions gain increased melee damage and ordnance damage. If you don't know, ordnance is a new weapon slot in your inventory, and this is where you equip your launchers and your grenades. Overheal. While Beex has Overshield, she and her minions gain health regeneration. For the final tier 3 skill, we have Purple Fiends. Beex and her minions gain critical hit damage. Alright, onto the lower left branch, we have Icy Attunement. Attune kill skill, while Beex is attuned to Cryo. Killing an enemy restores ammo and ordnance cooldown. Effects persist for a duration after attunement is switched. For the third augment, we have Hexus Nexus. Trouble now taunts enemies, making them more likely to target him. Command skill, press and hold F to command Trouble to charge target enemy, dealing melee damage in an area on impact, creating a singularity for a duration. Blast rates. On ordnance activation, Beex gains Overshield and increased fire rate for a duration. Overspirited. Kill skill, killing an enemy with ordnance damage or action skill damage will spawn a Explosive Remnant that deals cryo ordnance damage to nearby enemies. Explosive Remnant gains increased damage based on overkill damage. Blasted Fiends. Beex gains increased ordnance damage. A percentage of Beex's ordnance damage increases minion damage. Corporal. Beex and her minions gain increased maximum Overshield capacity and Overshield duration. While Beex has Overshield, she and her minions gain increased damage dealt. Shiver. Beex gains increased cryo damage and cryo status effect damage. And for the first capstone, we have Trouble Bubble. Trouble now gains Overshield whenever he deals damage. While Phase Familiar is active, Trouble gains an Elemental Aura, dealing ordnance damage over time to nearby enemies. For the middle branch, we have Elemental Essence. Beex gains increased elemental damage. Double this effective action skill is active. For the fourth augment, we have Vorpal Fang. Trouble gains a chance to critically hit with all attacks. Command skill, press and hold F to command Trouble to summon Phase Daggers, overhead that fire at nearby enemies, dealing melee damage on impact. Keen Fiends. Minion damage gains critical hit chance against any part of enemies. Infernal Sum. Beex and her minions deal increased critical hit damage against enemies below 66.6% HP. 2/3. Sacrificial Essence. Kill skill, Bex and her minions gain increased damage dealt, but Bex gains increased damage taken for a duration. Stacks are lost when Bex dodges or enters fight for your life. Reawakening. Whenever Bex or her minions critically hit, there is a chance to restore action skill cooldown. Tail Whip. Trouble gains the ability to Tail Whip, dealing damage in an area over 2 hits. And for the second capstone, we have Double Trouble. Trouble now gains a chance to create an illusion near the enemy when dealing damage. Critical hits double that chance. Illusions become bad A's while Phase Familiar is active. Onto the right branch, we have Shocking Attunement. Attune skill, while Bex is attuned to Shock. Bex gains movement speed and gun damage while moving. Effects persist for a duration after attunement is switched. For the fifth and final augment for Red Tree, we have Beast Mode. Command skill, press and hold F to command Trouble to enter Beast Mode, becoming immune to damage and gaining increased minion attack speed and movement speed for a duration. Kill skill, extend Beast Mode's duration. Grave Current. Kill skill, Vex minions gain bonus shock damage. Dead Wire. When Vex deals gun damage, there's a chance to spawn a Spark Remnant that will seek out nearby enemies and explode, dealing shock minion damage to nearby enemies. Grave Thirst. Kill skill, Vex and her minions gain lifesteal for a duration. Infusion. When Vex uses a rep kit, Vex and her minions gain bonus damage with weapons and melee damage for a duration. Bonus damage elemental type is based on Vex's current equipped weapon. Stormblast. Vex gains increased shock damage and shock status effect damage. And for the third and final capstone, we have Unsealed. Trouble will now mark his current target, causing them to take increased gun damage from Vex. Kill skill, when a marked enemy is killed, Trouble gains a stack of Unsealed for a duration, granting health regeneration and increased damage. While Phase Familiar is active, Unsealed effects are doubled. Alright, that's everything in the red tree, so let's go to the green tree. For the green tree, our action skill is called Incarnate. Vex creates a phase explosion, dealing damage to nearby enemies and fully restoring her health. While active, Vex can use Eldritch Blast and gains increased movement speed. Eldritch Blast. Press F to fire an Eldritch Blast from her offhand, dealing damage to nearby enemies on impact. Dealing gun damage reduces Eldritch Blast's cooldown. Press and hold F to end Incarnate early, partially refunding cooldown. Onto the first tier 1 skill, we have Guns and Needles. Kill skill, restore rep kit's cooldown by a percentage. Volatile Essence. Vex gains increased splash damage. Double this effect when an action skill is active. Leeching Attunement. Attune skill, while Vex is attuned to Kinetic, she gains increased lifesteal and reload speed. Effects persist for a duration after attunement is switched. Now, I did mention I didn't want to put my input out there for every single skill, but having lifesteal on the first skill in your skill tree is pretty crazy. Grave Sights. Kill skill, Vex gains increased critical hit damage and weapon handling. Onto the tier 2 skills, we have Fiendish Invigoration. When Vex uses a rep kit, she and her minions gain increased movement speed and fire rate for a duration. For the first augment in Green Tree, we have Geist Wave. Instead of causing a phase explosion, Vex launches a Geist Wave, dealing ordnance damage to enemies it passes through. Each affected enemy takes increased damage for a duration. Bloodletter. Gun and skill critical hits have a chance to apply Bleed, causing kinetic status effect damage over time for a duration. Bleed is affected by status effect application chance, and is considered a status effect. For the second augment, we have Energy Vampire. Vex deals status effect damage to nearby enemies over time and gains overshield for each enemy affected. Kill skill, killing enemies while Incarnate is active will grant a stack of Energy Vampire, increasing status effect damage. Stacks are lost when Incarnate ends. Grave Implements. Kill skill, Vex and her minions gain increased gun damage for a duration. On to tier 3 skills, we have Channeling. Vex gains increased action skill duration and attunement duration. Material Components. Vex gains increased kinetic damage and kinetic status effect damage. Great Power. Vex's kill skills gain increase max stacks. That sounds really good. Target Prescience. Vex's gun damage gains critical hit chance against any part of enemies. Going down to the lower left branch, we have Radiant Attunement. Attune skill, while Vex is attuned to Radiation, she gains increased splash damage and maximum shield capacity. Effects persist for a duration after attunement is switched. For the third augment, we have Iron Maiden. Phase Explosion and Eldritch Blast restores shield for each enemy hit and deals increased damage based on Vex's current shield. Conjunction. Vex gains increased gun damage the more full her shield and gains damage reduction the less full her health. Dreadlight. When Vex deals gun damage, there's a chance to spawn a radioactive hazard, dealing radiation damage over time. Restorative Tonic. When Vex uses a rep kit, she gains increased shield regeneration for a duration. Full Moon. Vex gains action skill cooldown rate and ordnance cooldown rate based on the fullness of her shield. Havoc. Vex gains increased radiation damage and radiation status effect damage. And for the first capstone in Green Tree, we have Desecration. Phase Explosion and Eldritch Blast create hazards, dealing damage over time for a duration. Eldritch Blast is now homing. If it hits an airborne enemy, it bursts after a delay, dealing damage to nearby enemies. Onto the middle branch, we have Drink Full. Whenever Vex deals gun damage, gain a stack of Drink Full, increasing fire rate. Stacks of Drink Full are lost if a new stack has not been gained for a duration. For the fourth augment, we have Witchy Trigger Finger. Dealing damage with Eldritch Blast or a Phase Explosion will reload Vex's current guns and grant a stack of Witchy Trigger Finger, increasing gun damage for a duration. Stacks of Witchy Trigger Finger persist after Incarnate ends. Keen Mind. Vex's skill damage gains increased critical hit chance against any part of enemies. Phase Pocket. Vex gains increased mag size and weapon switch speed. Double this effect when an action skill is active. Mortal Terror. Chance to trigger kill skills when critically hitting enemies. Grave Element. Kill skill, Vex and her minions gain elemental damage for a duration. For the second capstone, we have Vibe Check. Eldritch Blast is now a charge skill. Activating Eldritch Blast consumes all charges to ricochet on hitting an enemy for each charge consumed. Eldritch Blast's cooldown reduction from gun damage is doubled. Strike Me Down. Whenever Vex would enter Fight for Your Life, she immediately gets a second wind, becomes invisible for a duration, and causes a phase explosion. Moving over to the right branch, we have Grave Vitality. Kill skill, Vex gains increased maximum health capacity and health regeneration. For the fifth and final augment for Green Tree, we have Grave Harvest. Kill skill, killing an enemy while Incarnate is active will spawn a Soul Orb that deals status effect damage over time to nearby enemies for a duration. Detonate a Soul Orb at range by pressing E, dealing ordnance damage to nearby enemies. Picking up a Soul Orb will restore health and action skill duration. Ars Arcana. Vex gains increased skill damage. A Deeper Grave. Vex's kill skills gain increased duration. Bloodshot. When Vex uses a repair kit, her next gunshot will become a Bloodshot, converting damage dealt into kinetic damage and dealing bonus damage based on her current health. Essence Leech. Vex gains lifesteal. Double this effect if action skill is active. For the third and final capstone for Green Tree, we have Heart Piercer. Eldritch Blast now sacrifices health on use, but becomes a piercing wave. Enemies hit take damage, and allies hit restore health. Gain bonus damage and healing based on sacrifice health. Eldritch Blast no longer has a cooldown. For the final skill in Green Tree, we have Blood is Power. Vex gains bonus kinetic damage with guns based on lifesteal when her health is full. Alright, that's it for Green Tree, so on to the Blue Tree. For the Blue Tree, the action skill is known as Dead Ringer. Charge skill, spawn a phase clone minion choosing Spectre or Reaper. Phase clones lose an ever-increasing amount of health per second, and their damage time matches Vex's current attunement when spawned. Press left mouse click to spawn a Reaper that taunts enemies and deals melee attack damage. Press right mouse click to spawn a Spectre that deals gun damage and cannot move. For the first tier 1 skill, we have Sanguine Fiends. Kill skill, Vex and her minions regenerate health over time. Idle Hands. Vex and her minions gain reload speed based on the fullness of her health. Cold Iron. Vex and her minions gain increased gun damage. Fell Inscriptions. Vex and her minions gain increased melee damage and maximum health capacity. For the tier 2 skills, we have Grave Assault. Kill skill, Vex and her minions gain increased fire rate for a duration. And for the first augment in Blue Tree, we have Gas Blaster. Minion skill. Spectres gain the ability to use Gas Blast, dealing gun damage to all nearby enemies on impact. Spectres will use Gas Blast on spawn and after they reload. Portents of Suffering. Vex and her minions gain increased status effect damage. For the second augment, we have Coven. Spawning a Reaper grants Vex and her minions health regeneration for a duration. Spawning a Spectre grants Vex and her minions critical hit chance for a duration. Cursed Blade. Vex's melee attacks apply Curse to hit enemies, making them take kinetic status effect damage anytime they take gun damage. For tier 3, we have Blood Sacrifice. Kill skills are triggered whenever Vex minion or minions die. Grave Fiends. Kill skill, Vex and her minions deal increased damage. Grave Quickening. Kill skill, Vex gains increased action skill cooldown rate. And for the final tier 3 skill, we have Extra Cursed. Curse damage now triggers on minion melee damage and deals increased damage when it's triggered by a critical hit. Going down to the lower left branch, we have Blight Attuned. Attune kill skill. While Vex is attuned to Corrosive, killing an enemy creates a haunting remnant minion for a duration that seeks out nearby enemies, dealing corrosive status effect damage over time. Kill skill, restore haunting remnant's duration if active. For the third augment, we have Wither. Minion skill. Spectres cast Wither on an enemy when they spawn, dealing status effect damage over time and increasing damage taken for a duration. Kill skill. Killing a withered enemy allows Spectres to use Wither again. Prismatic Ichor. Whenever Vex or her minions apply a status effect, apply another random elemental status effect. Keen Suffering. Status effect damage gains a chance to critically hit. Gastrobate. Whenever Vex dodges, she creates a Spectre nearby and becomes invisible for a duration, or her next gunshot. Shot to Go. When Vex swaps her current gun, her new gun has its ammo partially restored. Necrosis. Vex gains increased corrosive damage and corrosive status effect damage. And for the first capstone in Blue Tree, we have Heirloom. Spectres gain a copy of Vex's current equipped gun for a duration. Only one Spectre can have a copied gun at a time, and spawning a new Spectre will remove the copied gun from the previous Spectre. On to the middle branch, we have Burning Attunement. Attune skill, while Vex is attuned to Incendiary, Vex and her minions gain critical hit damage and status effect application chance. Effects persist for a duration after attunement is switched. For the fourth augment, we have Hellish Harvest. Minion skill, Reapers gain the ability to use Hellish Harvest, dealing melee damage 3 times in a large area around themselves and regenerate health for each enemy hit. Reapers will use Hellish Harvest on spawn, and every third time they melee attack. Recurrent. Whenever Vex deals gun damage or melee damage, Gain a stack of recurrence, which increases her and her minions' gun damage and melee damage. Stacks of recurrence are lost if a new stack has not been gained for a duration. Reverberations. Melee damage dealt by Beex or her minions have a chance to deal incendiary melee damage. Haruspex. Melee override. Beex now throws a phase dagger from her offhand that deals melee damage to enemies hit. Phase daggers can critically hit. Kill skill, phase dagger's cooldown is reset. Burnt offering. Beex gains increased incendiary damage and incendiary status effect damage. For the second capstone, we have Grim Reaper. Press and hold F to spawn a Grim Reaper that drains nearby enemies, dealing status effect damage over time and restoring health to each drained enemy. Whenever an enemy dies while being drained, there's a chance a new Reaper will be spawned. Pincushion. Haruspex now throws 5 daggers from both hands in a fan pattern. Killing an enemy now only refunds 33% of phase dagger's cooldown. Probably a typo, that's gonna get fixed. For the right branch, we have Prismatic Weaponry. Beex and her Spectres deal bonus damage with gun critical hits. Bonus damage is a random element type that changes on reload, and is increased for each active attunement. For the fifth and final augment for Blue Tree, we have Banshee's Wail. Minion skill. Reapers can now use Banshee's Wail periodically, dealing damage to nearby enemies and granting overshield to nearby allies. Damage increases applied to overshield granted to allies. Damage enemies deal reduced damage for a duration. Obedient Fiends. Beex gains increased minion damage. Minion skills and command skills gain further increased damage. Spirit Bomb. Reapers gain maximum health capacity and will release a Spirit Bomb remnant when they die, dealing damage of their elemental type to nearby enemies. Ancient Rites. Beex gains a stack of Ancient Rites for each of her active minions every second, increasing minion damage. Stacks are lost after a duration with no active minions for a duration. Death follows closer. Whenever Beex takes damage while at low health, spawn a Reaper nearby. Diner. Deadringer gains an additional charge. And for the third and final capstone, we have Dark Pact. Beex can equip 2 augments and gains the ability to use Dark Pact. Dark Pact. Press and hold F to fully restore health of all active phase clones, as well as granting increased movement speed and minion attack speed for a duration. Phase clones do not lose health over time while Dark Pact is active, and health loss is reset when Dark Pact ends. Whew, that is a lot to read. That was a lot of skills. Yeah, the build diversity for Borderlands 4 is going to be insane. Anyways, that's going to be all of Beex's skills and skill trees, so let me know below in the comments who you're going to be playing first as your Vault Hunter. You thinking Beex? You thinking Rafa? Amon? Harlow? I would like to hear your thoughts below. Anyways, thank you guys for watching the video, have an awesome day, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.